The signal came at 3:42 in the morning Earth time. Dr. Elena Cross was asleep at her desk. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. The screen in front of her had been showing the same empty static for 11 years. Then it beeped. She did not move at first. She thought it was a dream. The lab was quiet. The hum of the machines was the only sound. Her neck hurt from sleeping at a bad angle. The screen beeped again. This time she opened her eyes. She looked at the monitor. There was a line of data running across it, a real line, not noise, not the random scatter of dead space. A pattern, something with order in it. Her hand shook as she reached for the keyboard. She had spent her whole life waiting for this, listening to the dark. Most people thought she was wasting her time. The funding had almost been cut 3 times. Her own mother had told her to find a real job. And now here it was in the dead hours of the night with no one around to see it but her. A message from the stars. She ran the pattern through the decoder. The machine worked for 9 minutes. She did not breathe much during those 9 minutes. She just watched the little wheel spin on the screen and chewed the skin off her bottom lip. When the wheel stopped, the screen showed 2 words. "We see you." Elena stared at the words for a long time. Then she laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when a person does not know what else to do with their body. She picked up the phone and called the only number that mattered now. By noon, the whole world knew. You could not keep something like that quiet. The story leaked within the hour, and after that there was no stopping it. Every news channel ran the same 3 words across the bottom of the screen. "We see you." People stood in the streets and looked up at the sky in the middle of the day as if they might be able to see whoever was watching them. The governments of Earth pretended they had everything under control. They did not. Behind closed doors there was shouting and panic and people throwing chairs. No one had a plan for this. There had never needed to be a plan for this because deep down nobody had really believed the day would come. But it had come. And the message kept arriving, every day a little more. The aliens were not shy. They told humanity who they were. They called themselves the Conquered, a union of many worlds, hundreds of species bound together under one set of laws. They had been watching Earth for a long time. They had seen the radio waves leak out into space. They had heard the music and the news broadcasts and the laughter and the screaming. They knew what humans were. And they had decided humanity was not ready. That was the part that stung. The Conquered was polite about it. They did not threaten. They did not demand. They simply explained in their calm and careful way that Earth was a young world full of violent and unstable creatures, and that the galaxy was a delicate thing, and that humans would have to wait. Wait for what exactly, they did not say. There were rules, they explained. A young species could not simply join the galaxy. It had to be approved. It had to prove itself. It had to show that it could be trusted with the great open dark and everything that lived in it. The Conquered had a process, a long one. It could take 1,000 years, perhaps more. Until then, Earth was to stay home. The Conquered drew a line, a border. They placed it just past the orbit of the moon. Beyond that line, humanity was not welcome. They even sent ships to watch it, 3 of them. Long gray shapes that hung in the black sky and never moved. You could see them at night if you knew where to look. Most people did not look. It was too frightening. The message was simple. You may build, you may dream, you may grow, but you will not leave. Not yet, not for a long, long time. The galaxy had spoken. And humanity, for once, said nothing back. Captain Marcus Vega stood at the window of the orbital station and looked at one of the gray ships through a telescope. He was 46 years old. He had spent 20 of those years flying. First fighter craft, back when there were still wars worth fighting on the ground. Then the early space vessels, the clumsy ones that shook so hard during launch you thought your teeth would fall out. He had been the 3rd human ever to walk on Mars. He had a scar on his left hand from a coolant leak that should have killed him. He did not talk about that day. The gray ship filled the lens. It was beautiful in an ugly way. Smooth, featureless. No windows, no markings, nothing that told you anything about the minds that built it. It just sat there, patient as a stone, and watched. "They are not even pointing weapons at us," said the young officer beside him. Her name was Reyes. She was 26 and angry about everything, which Marcus thought was probably the correct way to be at 26. "They don't need to. They're not scared of us. We're not even worth a weapon to them." Marcus did not answer right away. He kept his eye on the telescope. "My grandfather flew planes," he said at last. "Old ones, the kind with propellers. He told me once that the sky used to feel endless, like there was always more of it, more to climb into, more to find. And now there isn't." "Now there's a fence," Marcus said. "Right there, past the moon, the whole rest of everything on the other side of it." He finally pulled away from the telescope and rubbed his eye. "And some polite voice telling us to be good little children and stay in the yard." Reyes crossed her arms. "So what do we do?" Marcus looked at her. There was something in his face that she would remember later, when everything had changed. A kind of stubbornness. The look of a man who had been told no one too many times and had stopped finding it convincing. "We do what humans always do," he said. "We figure out how to climb the fence. The thing about telling a species like humanity to sit still is that you do not actually understand what you are asking." The conquered did not understand. They were old, they were wise. They had seen many young worlds, and most of those worlds had done exactly as they were told. A young species faced with a power so far beyond it usually grew quiet. It accepted its place. It waited its turn, generation after generation, slow and patient and obedient. That was the normal way of things. Humanity was not normal. It started small, it always does. A man named Dr. Aaron Vell, working out of a half-funded lab in a cold country, looked at the data the Conquered had sent and noticed something. The Conquered had told humanity a great deal about itself, more than it meant to. In its long, careful explanations of why humans were not ready, it had let slip pieces of how its own technology worked. Just hints, just edges of things, a word here, a diagram there. Enough to suggest that the laws of physics humanity thought it understood were not the whole story. Dr. Vell did not sleep much after he noticed that. He pulled in others, quietly, a physicist from one country, an engineer from another. Old rivals who had spent their careers competing now sat at the same table because something larger had arrived to make their old quarrels look childish. They did not announce what they were doing. They did not want the conquered ships to notice. They worked underground in the dark, the way humans had always worked best. And slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand. The conquered had assumed humanity would treat their warning as a wall, a thing to stop at. Humanity treated it as a hint. Alina Cross became famous, which she hated. People wanted her opinion on everything now. She was the woman who had heard the stars first. They put her face on screens. They asked her what the aliens were like, as if she had met them, as if she had shared a meal with them instead of decoding 2 words at 4 in the morning. She gave the same answer every time. "I don't know, nobody knows, that's the whole problem." But behind the cameras she was working too. The conquered kept sending messages and someone had to read them, and she was the best in the world at it. So she read, and the more she read, the stranger it felt. The conquered's messages were kind. That was the unsettling part. They were not the words of a cruel master. They were the words of a careful parent, patient, gentle, certain that they knew best. "We do this for your protection," the messages said. "The galaxy is dangerous. Young species who rush out into it do not survive. We have seen it many times. The grief of those losses lives in us still. We will not watch it happen to you. Stay. Grow. When you are ready, we will welcome you with open arms. Trust us." Alina read those words again and again. And she could not decide if they were the most beautiful thing she had ever read, or the most insulting. She brought it up with the council once, in one of the long, boring meetings where powerful people argued about things they did not understand. She stood up, which she was not supposed to do, and she said it plainly. "They think we're children," she said, "and maybe they're right, maybe we are, but here's the thing nobody in this room wants to say out loud." She looked around at all of them. "Children grow up." The room went quiet. "They grow up," she said again. "And one day they look at the people who told them to stay in their room, and they realize those people were never as big as they seemed." She sat down. Nobody clapped, but a few of them did not forget what she said either. The first test was a disaster. Dr. Vell and his hidden team had built something. They were not even sure what to call it. A drive of some kind. A way to fold the space in front of a ship so that the ship did not so much travel through the distance as step over it. The math said it would work. The math had said a lot of things. They tested it on a small unmanned probe, far out past Mars where the conquered ships could not see well. The probe vanished. It did not jump, it did not fold space. It simply stopped existing all at once with a flash of light that the instruments could barely capture. There one moment, gone the next. No wreckage, no signal, nothing. The team sat in silence for a long time after that. "We killed it," Reyes said. She had joined the project by then. Marcus had pulled her in. "We just turned it into light." "We learned something," Vell said quietly. "We learned how to delete a probe." "No," Vell was staring at the data and there was a strange light in his eyes. "We learned the drive works. It folded the space. The problem isn't the folding. The problem is that the probe couldn't survive the fold. It came apart. But the fold itself," he pointed at the screen at a curve of numbers that meant nothing to anyone but him. "The fold was perfect. We did the impossible thing. We just did it to something too weak to come out the other side." He looked up at them. "We don't need a better drive," he said. "We need a better ship." Up in orbit, on the gray vessels of the Conquered, something stirred. The Watchers had noticed the flash. They were patient, but they were not blind. A small light far out past the fourth planet, there and gone, with a signature in it that did not match any human technology they had on file. The Watchers were not worried. Not yet. Young species did strange things. They built things that exploded. It was part of growing. The Conquered had seen 10,000 such flashes across 10,000 worlds, and almost all of them came to nothing. But the Watchers made a note of it. They sent the note home, across the great dark, to the Council of the Conquered that sat among the old stars and made the slow decisions that shaped the galaxy. The note said, in the careful language of beings who had watched many young worlds, "The humans are testing something, probably nothing. We will continue to observe." The Council read the note and was not concerned. They had told the humans to wait. The humans would wait. They always did. The Council went back to its slow and ancient business, and did not think about the small blue world again for some time. That was the first mistake. There would be others. Marcus Vega could not sleep that night. He stood again at the window of the station and looked at the gray ships hanging in the dark. Reyes found him there. "Vell thinks we can do it," she said. "A ship that survives the fold. He thinks it's just engineering now. Just time and money and people." "He's right," Marcus said. "You sound sure." "I am sure." Marcus did not look away from the window. "Do you know why the Conquered thinks we'll wait, really wait, 1,000 years? Reyes shook her head. "Because that's what every other species did," Marcus said. "They told us so, in their messages. Every young world they ever found they put behind a fence, and every young world stayed behind it, patient, grateful even. They think that's the law of nature. They think it's just how young things behave." He finally turned and looked at her. "But they've never met anything like us. They don't know what we are. They think we're the same as all the others, just a little younger." "And we're not." Marcus smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had been told to stay in the yard his whole life and had spent that whole life learning to climb. We're the species that put a flag on a frozen rock because someone said we couldn't get there, he said. We're the ones who crossed oceans in boats made of trees because the other side might have something good on it. We don't wait, Rays. We never have. We just keep going until something stops us. He turned back to the window. The gray ships hung there, silent and certain. And nothing stopped us yet, he said. Far below them, the blue world turned slowly in the dark, full of 7 billion people who had just been told to be patient. It was not in their nature. The galaxy was about to find that out. It took them 11 years to build the first ship that came back. That was not a long time. Not really. Not for what they did. But it felt like forever to the people who lived through it, because every day of those years was a day spent in secret, looking over their shoulders, hiding the truth from the gray ships in the sky and from most of their own people too. The world had changed in those years. Humanity had stopped fighting itself mostly. It is hard to keep up old hatreds when a larger thing has arrived to make you feel small. The borders between nations grew quiet. The old armies turned their work toward the sky. Money that used to be spent on killing each other was spent instead on the one project that mattered now, even though most people did not know it existed. They called the project the Long Climb. Dr. Aaron Vell ran the science of it. He was an old man by then. His hands shook and he forgot small things, but he never forgot the numbers. The numbers lived in him like a second heartbeat. Marcus Vega ran the flying of it. He was old too, but he refused to let anyone else take the first ship out. He had earned it, he said. He had been looking at that fence in the sky for over a decade. He was going to be the one who climbed it. And Rays ran the people. She was not young and angry anymore. She was middle-aged and angry, which is a far more dangerous thing. She had become the one who held the whole project together, who knew where every piece was and every person stood, who could look a frightened engineer in the eye and make them believe again. The three of them stood in the launch bay on the morning of the first true test and looked at the ship they had built. It did not look like much. It was small, plain, a blunt gray shape not so different from the conquered ships which had not been an accident. They had studied those ships for years through every telescope they had, and they had borrowed what they could understand. The ship had no name yet, just a number. They called it Climb 1. It's ugly, Ray said. It's beautiful, said Val. It's both, said Marcus. That's how you know it's ours. Climb 1 folded space at 9:14 in the morning. It did not vanish in a flash this time. That was the whole point. The years of work, the failed probes, the equations rewritten 10,000 times, all of it came down to this single question. Could a thing pass through the fold and come out whole on the other side? The ship was unmanned for this test. They were not fools. But it carried a full set of instruments and a camera and a recording of a child singing, which had been Vell's idea and which nobody argued with. The fold opened. A ripple in the dark, a bending of the stars behind it. Climb 1 slid into the ripple, and then it was gone, not destroyed, just somewhere else, 2 billion kilometers away in the blink of an eye, out past the orbit of the 7th planet. For 9 seconds there was nothing. Then the signal came back. The ship was whole. The instruments worked. The camera showed the rings of a distant world, close up, in a place no human machine had ever been. And the recording was still playing, the child still singing, the small human voice carrying through a vessel that had just done the impossible. The launch bay erupted. People who had not slept properly in years screamed and wept and grabbed each other. Rays put her face in her hands. Vell sat down very slowly, as if his legs had stopped working, and stared at the screen with tears running down the deep lines of his face. Marcus did not celebrate. He stood very still and looked at the image of those distant rings, and he thought about the fence in the sky, and how it was no longer a fence at all. It was just a line someone had drawn, and lines could be crossed. "Bring her home," he said quietly. Climb 1 folded again, and came back and landed and was whole. The long climb was over. The real work was about to begin. They did not tell the conquered. This was a thing they argued about long and hard in the meetings that followed. Some people said they should announce it, stand tall, tell the galaxy that humanity had cracked the fold and would not be staying home after all. Be proud, be loud. Alina Cross was in those meetings. She was old now too, her hair gone gray, but her mind was sharp as ever, and the others still listened when she spoke, because she was the one who had heard the stars first. "No," she said, "we don't tell them." "Why not?" someone asked. "We did it, we earned it, let them see what we are." "Because they told us we couldn't," Alina said. "And the moment we show them we can, they'll have to decide what to do about it. Right now they're not paying attention. Right now they think we're a quiet little world waiting our turn. The day they learn the truth is the day they start to worry, and I don't know what a worried conquered does. Neither do you. Nobody in this room does." She looked around at all of them. "So we don't find out until we're ready. We build, quietly. We make ourselves strong enough that, when they finally notice, it's too late for them to do anything but talk." The room was silent. "How strong is strong enough?" Marcus asked. Alina looked at him. The two of them had known each other for almost 40 years now, since the early days, since before any of this. "Strong enough that they can't put us back behind the fence," she said. "Strong enough that when they look at us they see something they have to respect. Not a child, an equal," she paused, "or something they're afraid of. One of the two. I'd prefer the first, but I'll take the second." So humanity built in secret, and it built fast. One ship became 10. 10 became 100. The factories that had once made cars and planes now made vessels that could fold the dark, and they made them in places the conquered ships could not see, on the far side of the moon, in the deep belt of rocks past Mars, in stations hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids. And the ships got better. That was the part the conquered would never have believed. Humanity did not just copy the fold drive once and stop. It improved it. Every new ship was faster than the last. Every new design fixed some flaw the engineers had found in the one before. The humans treated their own technology the way they treated everything, as a thing to be argued with, broken apart, and rebuilt better. Within 5 years of Climb 1, humanity had ships that could fold halfway across the solar system in a single jump. Within 10, they had ships that could leave the solar system entirely and come back the same day. And they were learning other things too. The fold drive had been the door, but once that door was open, all sorts of other things came pouring through. Materials science, energy, ways of healing the body, ways of building machines that could think a little, just enough to be useful, never enough to be dangerous. The conquered, in trying to explain why humanity was not ready, had handed humanity the very tools it needed to become ready in a fraction of the time the conquered thought possible. The conquered had a process that took 1,000 years. Humanity was going to do it in 50. But it was not all victory. It never is. There were deaths. The fold was forgiving, but it was not perfect, and not every test came home. There were ships that went out and never returned, crews of brave people who folded into the dark and were simply gone with no wreckage and no answers. Each loss was a wound. Each one was mourned. There was a wall at the main station now, a long gray wall, and on it were the names of everyone who had gone out and not come back. The wall grew longer every year. Reyes read the names sometimes, alone, late at night. She had known many of them. She had recruited some of them herself, had looked them in the eye and asked them to risk everything, and they had said yes, and now their names were on a wall. "Was it worth it?" she asked Marcus once, standing in front of that wall. He stood beside her, and read the names too. "Ask them," he said, "not me. Ask the people on this wall. Every one of them volunteered. Every one of them knew the risk. Every one of them looked at that fence in the sky and decided they'd rather die climbing it than live behind it." He put his hand flat against the cold metal over a name near the top. "This one, Lieutenant Park. You know what she said to me before her last flight?" Reyes shook her head. She said my grandmother lived her whole life being told where she could and couldn't go, and she said I am not going to die having been told the same thing. Marcus's voice was rough. She didn't come back, but she died on the right side of that choice. They all did. Reyes looked at the wall for a long moment. Yeah, she said quietly, it was worth it. Aaron Vell died in his sleep at the age of 81. He had lived to see the fleet grow to 1,000 ships. He had lived to see humans walk on worlds around other stars, in secret, planting no flags, taking no ground, just looking, just learning, just proving to themselves that they could. He had lived to see the thing he started in a half-funded lab become the largest project in the history of his species. He had not lived to see the conquered find out. That was the one thing he had wanted. He told Marcus so, near the end, in the hospital room with the machines beeping softly around him. I wanted to see their faces, the old man said. His voice was very thin. When they realize, when they look at us and understand what we did while they weren't watching, I wanted to see that. You will, Marcus said, though they both knew it was not true. You'll see it, hang on. Vell smiled, he knew. No, he said, but you'll see it for me, and when you do, he stopped to breathe. When you do, I want you to think of me, and I want you to think one thing. What's that? The old man's eyes were bright, even at the end, even with everything failing. We were never the children, he said. We just let them think we were. He closed his eyes. The machines kept beeping for a while, and then they stopped. They named the next ship after him, the Aaron Vell. It was the largest vessel humanity had ever built, a great gray shape that dwarfed everything around it, and when it folded out into the dark for its first flight, the whole station watched, and many of them wept because the old man would have loved to see it, and he could not. But his name was on the hull, and the hull would go places he had only dreamed of. That was something. The conquered noticed eventually. Of course they did. It was not the ships that gave it away. The humans had hidden those well. It was something smaller. A trader from a distant conquered world, passing through a far system on lawful business, saw something he should not have seen. A human vessel, parked in the dark of a moon, doing nothing wrong, simply being where no human vessel should have been able to reach. The trader was confused at first. He checked his records. The records said humanity was a young world, fenced in past its own moon, forbidden the fold, not due to join the galaxy for another 900 years. The records were wrong. The trader did the lawful thing. He reported it. The report traveled across the dark, from station to station, council to council, until it reached the old stars where the great minds of the conquered sat and made their slow decisions. The report said, in the careful language of the conquered, a human vessel has been observed in deep space, far beyond the permitted boundary. The vessel uses the fold. This is not possible according to our assessment. Recommend immediate investigation. The council read the report. For the first time in a very long time, the council was surprised. They sent ships, not 3 watchers this time, a proper fleet by conquered standards, 40 vessels crewed by experienced beings sent to the small blue world to find out what was happening and to remind humanity firmly of its place. The fleet folded toward Earth, certain of what it would find. A frightened young species caught breaking the rules, ready to apologize and obey. That is not what they found. Marcus Vega was an old man when the conquered fleet arrived. He was nearly 90. He should have retired years ago. He had refused. He had said he would step down the day the conquered came back and not one day before. The conquered came back on a cold morning in early spring. 40 gray ships folded into the space past the moon, where the old fence had been, and arranged themselves in a careful formation, and waited for the humans to notice them and grow afraid. The humans noticed. They were not afraid. Marcus stood on the command deck of the main station and watched the conquered fleet appear on the great screen, 40 cold shapes against the stars. Ray stood beside him. She was old too now. Elena Cross was there as well, the three of them together, the last of the ones who had been there at the start, who had heard the first message and chosen not to obey it. 40 ships, Ray said. Is that supposed to scare us? It would have, Marcus said. Once, 11 years ago, 40 conquered ships would have ended us. He looked at the screen, at the cold gray fleet, certain and patient and completely unaware of what was about to happen to its understanding of the galaxy. But that was a long time ago. We were children then. He almost smiled. We grew up. Elena stepped forward. The Conquered was sending a message. The same calm, careful, patient voice as always, the voice of a parent disappointed in a child, explaining gently that rules had been broken and order would now be restored. Elena listened to it, the woman who had heard the stars first, hearing them again, all these years later. Then she turned to Marcus. They still think we're going to apologize, she said. I know, said Marcus. What do we tell them? Marcus Vega looked at the screen one last time, at the fence that was no longer a fence, at the galaxy that was about to learn, all at once, in a single morning, exactly what humanity had been building in the dark while no one was watching. He thought of Aaron Vell, who had wanted to see this and could not. He thought of the long gray wall of names. He thought of a lieutenant named Park who had died, rather than be told where she could go. Tell them, he said quietly, to look behind them. Rays pressed the command. And out of the dark all around the conquered fleet, the legends began to appear. They came out of the fold without a sound, because in space there is no sound, and somehow that made it worse. One moment the conquered fleet hung alone in the dark past the moon, 40 gray ships in their careful formation, certain of their place at the top of the galaxy. The next moment they were not alone. Ships appeared all around them. Not 3, not 40, hundreds. They folded into being in perfect rings, layer upon layer, surrounding the conquered fleet on every side, above and below and all around, so that wherever the conquered vessels turned their sensors, they saw human ships looking back. And these were not the blunt little vessels of the early days. These were something else. Great sweeping shapes, larger than anything the Conquered had brought, built not just to travel but to be seen, to be understood at a glance as the work of a species that had decided it would not be small any longer. They caught the light of the distant sun and threw it back, and for a moment the dark past the moon was not dark at all. It glittered. It blazed. A fleet of legends materialized. The galaxy could only watch. On the command deck of the lead conquered vessel, the being in charge did not understand what it was seeing. Its name, in the language of its people, was a long string of sounds that meant roughly the steady one, or the one who does not rush. It had served the conquered for 900 of Earth's years. It had overseen the gentle correction of a dozen young worlds, had watched a dozen frightened species apologize and obey, had never once in all that time seen anything it did not expect. It was seeing something it did not expect now. Report, it said, in the calm voice the conquered prized above all things. The reports came back and none of them made sense. The human ships outnumbered the conquered fleet by 10 to 1. The human ships were larger. The human ships used the fold, which was impossible, and they used it better than the conquered did, which was more impossible still. The sensors could not even read all of them. Some of the human vessels were made of materials the conquered had no name for. This is not possible, said the steady one. Humanity is a young world. The assessment was clear. 900 more years before they are ready for the fold. The assessment, said one of its officers carefully, appears to have been wrong. The steady one was quiet for a long moment. It had spent its whole long life believing in the assessment, in the process, in the slow and certain order of the galaxy, where young worlds waited their turn and old worlds guided them, gently, wisely, never cruelly. That order had felt as solid as the stars themselves. And now, in a single morning, the order had cracked. Open a channel to them, the steady one said at last. Let us speak to them. There has been some mistake. We will explain. They will understand. The channel opened. And for the first time, the conquered heard humanity speak back. Marcus Vega's face appeared on the conquered screen. An old man. They could see that even across the gulf between their species. Lined face, white hair, hands that had begun to shake. To the conquered who lived for thousands of years, he looked impossibly fragile, a thing that would break if you touched it wrong. But his eyes were not fragile. His eyes were steady as stone. I am Marcus Vega, he said. I speak for Earth. I have been waiting a long time to say that to you. The steady one composed itself. It fell back on the words it knew, the calm and careful words that had brought a dozen young worlds to heal. Captain Vega, it said, we come in peace as we always have. We see that you have made great progress. This is to be celebrated, but you have broken the boundary we set and used technology you were not yet meant to hold. We understand the eagerness of the young. We do not blame you, but you must understand that there are rules, ancient rules made to protect not only the galaxy but yourselves. We must ask you to stand down your ships, return within your boundary, and allow us to guide you properly through the process, as we have guided so many before you. This is for your protection. Trust us. It was a good speech. It had worked a dozen times before. Marcus Vega listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. When the steady one had finished, the old man was quiet for a moment, and then he did something the conquered did not expect. He smiled. Trust you, he said. You know that word's come up a lot over the years. Every message you ever sent us, trust us. Wait, be patient, we know best. He leaned forward a little toward the screen. I want to tell you something. The first message you ever sent us 50 years ago, my friend Alina decoded it. 2 words, we see you. Do you remember that? The steady one did not answer. It did not know where this was going. We see you, Marcus said again softly. That's what you told us. And you know what? You were right. You did see us. You saw a young, violent, frightened little world and you decided it had to be managed, kept small, kept safe, kept behind a fence until it learned to behave. His voice hardened. But here's the thing you got wrong. You saw us, but you never once tried to understand us. He spread his hands, and on the screen behind him, the great fleet of human ships glittered in the dark. You told us to wait 1,000 years, Marcus said. We did it in 50. You told us we weren't ready for the fold. We didn't just learn it, we made it better than yours. You drew a line past our moon and told us not to cross it. He shook his head slowly. We didn't just cross it. We crossed the whole galaxy and came back and you never even noticed. We've stood on worlds you've never named. We've seen stars you forgot existed. We did all of it in the dark, while you sat in your old chairs and assured each other that the children were safely in their room. The steady one felt something it had not felt in 900 years. It felt small. You misunderstand, the steady one tried. Its calm was fraying now just slightly in a way its own officers had never heard. Our intent was never to keep you small. It was to keep you safe. The galaxy is dangerous. There are species out there far older and far crueler than us. There are powers that would have crushed a young Earth without a thought. We fenced you in to protect you from them. That is the truth. We are not your jailers. We are your shield. And for the first time, Marcus paused. Because something in that rang true. He could hear it. The steady one was not lying. There was real fear in those words, real care. The care of an old thing that had watched young things die and did not want to watch it again. Alina Cross stepped into view beside Marcus. The conquered recognized her too, somehow. The one who had heard them first. We believe you, Alina said, maybe for the first time. We actually believe you mean well, but you have to understand something. She looked into the screen, into the strange eyes of a being older than her whole civilization. Meaning well isn't the same as being right. You decided what was good for us without ever asking us. You looked at us and you saw a child, and you locked the child in its room for its own protection, and you called that love. She shook her head. It isn't love. It's fear wearing love's clothes, and we are done being afraid. You do not understand the dangers. Then tell us, Alina said. Tell us about the dangers as equals. Sit down with us and explain what's out there and we'll decide together what to do about it. That's what you do with someone you respect. You don't fence them in. You don't decide for them, you talk to them. She paused. We're not asking your permission to exist anymore. Those days are over, but we'd still rather have you as a partner than an enemy. The choice is yours, it always was. You just never offered it to us. So we're offering it to you. The steady one was silent. Around it the human fleet glittered, patient now, waiting. The humans were not firing. The humans had not fired a single shot. They had simply appeared in overwhelming numbers and proven a point, and then offered their hand. That more than anything unsettled the steady one. It had expected fear or rage or desperate apology. It had not expected this. This calm. This strange, hard generosity. The humans held all the cards, and instead of crushing the conquered fleet, they were inviting it to talk. It was not how young species behaved. It was, the steady one realized slowly, how a grown one did. Far away, across the dark, the great council of the conquered received the news as it happened. They were old beings, the council, the oldest of the old. They had guided the galaxy for longer than humanity had been a species, and they were not used to being surprised, and they did not like it. The reports came in. Humanity had the fold. Humanity had a fleet larger and finer than anything the conquered could field. Humanity had surrounded a conquered fleet and instead of destroying it, had offered partnership. The council argued. Some among them were afraid. They said humanity was dangerous, that it had hidden its strength and broken the rules and could not be trusted, that the only safe path was to gather the full might of the conquered and put the humans down before they grew any stronger. There were enough worlds in the conquered, enough ships, enough power. It could be done. It would be terrible, but it could be done. Others disagreed. They said humanity had not fired a shot. They said a species that wanted war does not offer its hand. They said the old assessment had been wrong, badly wrong, and that the right response to being wrong was to learn, not to lash out. They said that to attack humanity now would be to start the very war they feared, and to start it against a foe they did not understand. The argument went on for a long time. And while it went on, an old member of the council, one who had said nothing yet, finally spoke. We made a mistake, this one said. Not today, long ago. The day we drew the line past their moon and called it protection. We never asked them what they wanted, we decided we knew. We have done this 1,000 times with 1,000 young worlds, and every time it worked, and so we believed it was wisdom. The old being paused. But it was not wisdom, it was habit. And habit is a poor guide when something new arrives. Something has arrived now that does not fit our habits. The question is not whether to crush it or fear it. The question is whether we are wise enough to change. The council was quiet. They have offered us partnership, the old being continued. After everything we did to them, they have offered us their hand. I have lived a very long time, and I have rarely seen such a thing. Most species, given that power, would have taken revenge. These ones offer friendship instead. It looked around at the others. I do not think that is the act of a dangerous people. I think it is the act of a people better than we expected, perhaps even better than us. And I think if we attack them, we will deserve the war that follows, and we will lose it, and the galaxy will be poorer for the loss of what they might have become. Back past the moon, the steady one made its decision. It was not authorized to make it. The council had not yet spoken. But the steady one had served the conquered for 900 years, and it had earned the right to trust its own judgment, and its judgment now was clear. Captain Vega, it said, Alina Cross, I have heard you. I will be honest with you in a way my people are not always honest even with ourselves. It paused. We were wrong about you. I do not yet know how wrong or in how many ways, but I know that we were. And I know that you have shown us a mercy we did not earn. You could have destroyed this fleet. You chose to speak instead. That choice will not be forgotten. On the human side, Marcus and Alina waited. I cannot speak for all the conquered, the steady one said. That is for the council, and the council is old and slow and afraid, but I can speak for this fleet and for myself, and I say this. It drew itself up in whatever way its strange body could. We came here to put you back behind your fence. We will not do that. We came here to remind you of your place. Instead, you have reminded us of ours. We are not the masters of this galaxy. We never were. We were only the ones who got there first. It paused again. And now you have arrived. And the galaxy is larger than it was this morning and stranger, and I find that I am not afraid of that. I find that I am glad of it. It extended something, a gesture, an opening of its limbs that, across the gulf between species, somehow meant the same thing a handshake meant. Let us talk, the steady one said. As equals, as you asked, let us begin again. Marcus Vega looked at the strange old being on the screen, the representative of a power that had once held his entire species in the palm of its hand, now reaching out across the dark in something like respect. He thought of Aaron Vell, who had wanted to see this face, who would have given anything to see this exact moment. He should be here, Marcus said quietly to Alina. He is, she said. His name's on the biggest ship out there. He's watching, trust me. Marcus turned back to the screen. Yes, he said to the steady one, let's begin again. And the galaxy, which had only been able to watch, began at last to understand that everything had changed and would never change back, and that the small blue world it had once locked in its room had grown up while it was not looking, and had come out into the dark not with fists, but with an open hand. That was the most surprising thing of all. The conquered had been ready for a young species that wanted to conquer. It had not been ready for a young species that wanted to belong. Peace is harder than war. Anyone who has lived through both will tell you so. War is simple. There is an enemy and you fight them and one side wins. Peace has no clean shape. Peace means sitting in rooms with people who once wished you harm and finding a way to live with them and doing it again the next day and the next, for the rest of your life. Peace is the long, slow work of trust, and trust does not come easily to anyone, human or conquered. So the years that followed the meeting past the moon were not easy years. They were good years mostly, but they were not easy. The conquered council, after long argument, chose the path of the old member who had spoken for change. They did not attack. They opened their doors instead. Humanity was invited to join the galaxy, not in 900 years, not after 1,000 years of waiting, but now as it was, fierce and young and stubborn and far stronger than anyone had expected. The fence past the moon came down. Not in a single day. It came down slowly, piece by piece, agreement by agreement, in long meetings full of careful words and slow translation, but it came down. And one morning Alina Cross stood at the window of the station and looked out and realized there were no gray watcher ships in the sky anymore. They had simply gone. The fence was gone. The dark was open, all of it, the whole great galaxy, free for humanity to climb into at last. She had spent her whole life waiting for that. She wept a little standing there. Old women are allowed to weep at windows. She had earned it. Marcus Vega did not live to see all of it. He had held on long enough to see the fence come down, long enough to shake the strange limb of the steady one in person, on a station built halfway between Earth and the nearest conquered world, where humans and conquered met now as partners. He had been the first human to do that. He had stood there, an old man barely able to walk, and reached out and touched a being from another star, and the two of them had stood together in silence for a moment, two old soldiers who had spent their lives serving causes that had finally stopped being enemies. He died not long after, peacefully in his sleep, the way Aaron Vell had, the way the lucky ones do. They gave him a hero's farewell. The whole of humanity stopped to mourn him, and the conquered sent a delegation, which had never happened before for any human, and the steady one itself came and stood among the mourners and said, in its careful voice, that it had known the man only briefly but that it would remember him for the 1,000 years it had left to live, and that it counted itself fortunate to have met him. They named a star after him, a real star far out in the dark, one that humans had reached in the early days and that had no name in any language until then. They called it Vega's Light. It still burns out there. You can see it on a clear night if you know where to look. Ray spoke at his farewell. She was the last of the three now, the last of the ones who had been there at the start. Elena was gone too by then, and Vel long before her, and now Marcus, and only Ray's remained. He told me once that the sky used to feel endless, Ray said, standing before the gathered crowds and the conquered delegation and the watching cameras of two civilizations. His grandfather flew planes, the old kind with propellers, and his grandfather told him that the sky used to feel like there was always more of it, more to climb into, more to find. Her voice was steady, the way Marcus's had always been. And then the fence came, and for a while the sky stopped feeling endless. For a while it felt like a ceiling. She looked up, out the great window of the station at the open dark. He spent his whole life climbing that fence, she said. He didn't do it for himself. He knew he wouldn't see most of what came after. He did it so that the children growing up now and their children and theirs would look up at the sky and feel what his grandfather felt, that it's endless, that there's always more, that nothing is closed to them and no one gets to tell them where they can and cannot go. She paused. He gave us the sky back, that's what he did. He gave us the sky. The crowds were silent. Look up, Ray said. Go on, look up. That's his monument, the whole open dark, every star in it. She smiled, though there were tears on her face. He'd hate a statue, so look up instead. That's what he'd want. And they did. Humans and conquered both in that great station between the worlds. They looked up at the open sky, and somewhere out in it, a star called Vega's Light burned on. The galaxy changed after humanity joined it. The conquered had expected humanity to slot quietly into the existing order, to take its place among the species, learn the customs, follow the ancient ways. That is what young worlds did. Humanity did not do that. Humanity arrived in the galaxy the way it did everything, by questioning, arguing, breaking things apart to see how they worked and then building them better. The conquered had ways of doing things that had not changed in 10,000 years. Humans looked at those ways and asked, simply, why? Why this way and not another? Why has no one improved this? Why do you accept this when it could be so much better? At first this drove the conquered half mad. The older species found humans exhausting, loud, restless, never satisfied, always pushing, always asking, always certain that things could be made better and unwilling to leave them alone. But slowly, the conquered began to see what the humans saw. The ancient ways had grown stale. The galaxy had been still for so long that it had forgotten how to change, and a thing that cannot change is a thing that has begun, very quietly, to die. Humanity arrived like a cold wind through a closed house, throwing open windows that had been shut for 1,000 years, letting the stale air out and the fresh air in. The fold drive was just the beginning. Humans improved the medicine of a dozen species. They found new ways to grow food on dead worlds. They asked questions about the deep laws of the universe that the conquered had stopped asking long ago, and some of those questions had answers, and the answers changed things. Other young species watched all this, and other young species who had spent their own centuries waiting patiently behind their own fences began to wonder, if humanity did not have to wait, why did they? If the old assessment had been wrong about Earth, what else was it wrong about? The careful order of the conquered, which had held for 10,000 years, began to come apart, not in violence, in questions. In 1,000 small worlds looking at humanity and thinking, for the first time, that perhaps they did not have to be small either. The steady one lived through all of it, and watched and learned. It had been changed by that morning past the moon. It would never be quite the same being it had been before. It had spent 900 years certain of the order of things, and then in a single morning that certainty had broken, and a being does not recover from a thing like that. It does not want to. In the years that followed, the steady one became the great friend of humanity within the conquered. It spoke for them in the council. It argued their case when others grew afraid of how fast they changed things. It was the one, more than any other, who held the long peace together through the hard early years when it could so easily have fallen apart. Rays worked closely with it. The two of them, the old human and the old conquered, became something like friends, in the strange way that two people from utterly different worlds can become friends when they have both given their lives to the same difficult thing. "Do you ever regret it?" Rays asked the steady one once. They were aboard the station between the worlds looking out at the dark, letting us in, everything we changed, everything we broke. Your whole order 10,000 years old and we tore through it in a generation. Do you regret it? The steady one was quiet for a long moment, in the way it had. "I will tell you something I have never told another being," it said. "Before your people came, I was tired. I did not know it then. I had lived 900 years, and every one of those years was the same as the last, the same order, the same slow, certain ways. I thought I was at peace. I was not at peace. I was asleep." It turned its strange eyes toward her. "Your people woke me. You woke all of us. You came in loud and restless and impossible, and you would not let us sleep, and at first I hated you for it." It paused. "And now I cannot imagine the galaxy without you in it. I do not want to. You broke our order, yes. But our order was a beautiful cage, and we had been inside it so long we had forgotten it was a cage at all. You showed us the door. You showed all of us the door." It looked back out at the dark. "No," the steady one said. "I do not regret it. I only regret that we did not let you in sooner. I regret the years we wasted, telling you to wait when we should have been learning from you all along. That is my one regret, not that we changed, that we waited so long to begin." Rays did not say anything. There was nothing to say to that. She just stood beside her old friend, the human and the conquered, and the two of them looked out at the galaxy they had both helped to remake. Rays grew very old, older than anyone had expected. The human lifespan had stretched in those years with all the new medicine, and she lived to see things she had never dreamed of. She lived to see humanity spread across 100 worlds. She lived to see the first child born who was part human and part something else, the result of bonds that crossed species in ways the old conquered would never have allowed, ways that humanity simply did, because humanity had never been good at staying inside the lines. She lived to see the galaxy fill with motion and change and argument and life, where once it had been still. And near the end of her very long life, she went back to the wall, the long gray wall of names, the one she had read alone late at night in the early days, the wall of everyone who had gone out into the dark and not come back. It was still there. They had kept it, all these years, in a place of honor on the oldest station, and the names were still on it, every one. She walked along it slowly. Her body was failing now. She used a cane and then later a chair, and at the very end others had to help her. But she walked the length of that wall one last time, and she read every name, the way she always had. Lieutenant Park near the top. The one who would not be told where she could go. And so many others. So many people who had looked at the fence in the sky and decided they would rather die climbing it than live behind it. "We made it," Rays said to the wall very quietly in a voice that only the names could hear. "All of you, we made it. The sky's open now. It's all open. Everything you died for, we got it, every bit of it." Her old eyes were wet. "Thank you. I'm the last one left who remembers the start. So somebody had to come and say it. Thank you for all of it. We made it because of you." She stood before the wall a long time. Then she went home, and she rested, and not long after she joined them. The story should end there, perhaps. With the last of the founders gone, and the galaxy remade, and the long peace holding, and the children of Earth spread out among the stars, free at last, the fence a distant memory. But the universe is larger than any single victory. And humanity had grown strong, and the galaxy had grown open, and far out in the deep dark, past the edges of everything the conquered had ever mapped, in the places even the oldest species had never gone, something had taken notice of all this change. Something old. Something that had been still for far longer than the conquered, that had watched the galaxy from its dark and distant place for ages beyond counting, and that did not like the new motion it saw spreading across the stars. Something that had its own ideas about order and silence and the proper place of young and noisy things. The conquered had been a fence around humanity. But there were older powers than the conquered, and some fences are built by hands that do not believe in open hands at all. The peace had held for a long time. It was about to be tested in a way that no one, human or conquered, had imagined. And humanity, free at last, having climbed every fence put in front of it, was about to learn that the galaxy had one more fence left. The oldest one. The one nobody had ever climbed. It came without warning, the way the worst things do. The first sign was a silence. A whole conquered world, far out near the deep edge of the galaxy, simply stopped answering. One day it was there, sending its messages, going about its long, quiet business. The next day there was nothing, no distress call, no sign of attack, no wreckage, just silence where a billion living things had been. Then another world went silent, then another. The silence was moving. Slowly, world by world, from the deep dark toward the heart of the galaxy, something was passing through the old conquered systems and leaving nothing behind. Not death exactly, worse than death. The worlds were not destroyed. They were simply emptied, stilled. Whatever had been alive on them was gone, and what remained was quiet and cold and perfectly intact, like a house whose family has vanished and left everything in its place. The conquered, 10,000 years old, had no record of anything like it. But the oldest among them, the very oldest, had something, not a record, a memory, a fear passed down so long that it had become more like a legend than a fact. They called it, in the oldest language, the stillness, a thing from before the conquered, a thing that did not want to rule the galaxy or conquer it or even destroy it, a thing that simply wanted it quiet, that believed in whatever passed for its mind, that life was a kind of noise, and that noise was a kind of sickness, and that the proper state of all things was silence. It had slept for an age. The conquered, in its careful stillness, had not woken it. The conquered had been quiet enough to be ignored. But humanity was not quiet. Humanity had filled the galaxy with motion and change and argument and song, and the stillness had felt it, far out in its dark, the way a sleeper feels a light turned on, and it had woken, and it was coming to put out the light. The galaxy that faced this was not the galaxy of the old days. That was the thing the stillness did not understand, as it came inward through the dark. It expected the conquered it remembered. A slow, quiet, careful order that would freeze in fear and offer no resistance, the way everything always had before the stillness, back in the ages when it had last walked among the stars. It did not expect humanity. The humans, when they understood what was happening, did not freeze. They did what they always did. They got angry, and then they got to work. The descendant who led them now was a woman named Captain Tomas Reyes Park. And yes, the names were not an accident. She carried both of them, the woman who had held the project together and the lieutenant who would not be told where she could go, because in the long human way the families and the legends had braided together over the generations until the founders lived on in the names of those who came after. She had grown up on a station between the worlds. She had conquered friends before she had human ones. She was a child of the open galaxy, the very thing humanity had fought to build, and she had never once in her life seen a fence in the sky. She did not intend to start now. It empties worlds, she said, standing before the gathered council of the conquered and the assembled captains of humanity, two civilizations in one room which the old days would have thought impossible. It silences them. It thinks life is noise and it wants the noise to stop. She looked around the room. Well, I've got news for it. We are the noisiest thing this galaxy has ever produced. We are the loudest. most stubborn, most impossible species that ever crawled up out of the mud and refused to be told to be quiet. A few of the humans almost smiled. The conquered did not smile, but some of them felt something close to it. So it picked the wrong galaxy to come and silence, Ray's Park said, because we are not going to be quiet, not for it, not for anything. We climbed every fence this galaxy ever put in front of us, and now there's one more, the oldest one, the one nobody ever climbed. Her voice rang through the room. And we are going to climb that one too, or we are going to die so loud that the silence never forgets we were here. They built a fleet, the greatest the galaxy had ever seen. Not just human ships now. The conquered built alongside them, and the dozen young species who had followed humanity out from behind their own fences, and the old species too, the proud ancient ones who had once looked down on humanity and now stood beside it, because the stillness threatened all of them equally, and a common enemy has a way of erasing old quarrels. Humanity, who had learned the fold in 50 years, taught the others everything it knew. The whole galaxy pooled its knowledge openly, without secrets, in a way that 10,000 years of conquered caution had never allowed. And the building went faster than anything had ever gone, because, for the first time, the whole galaxy was building together, every species adding what it knew, every old technique improved by 100 new minds asking why. The stillness had counted on a quiet, frightened galaxy that would freeze and fall one world at a time. Instead, it found a galaxy on fire with purpose, loud, united, refusing to die quietly, and at the heart of it, driving it, refusing to let it slow down or lose hope, were the humans who had spent their entire history being told to be smaller and had simply never agreed to it. They met the stillness at the edge of a dying star, where it had paused to empty a cluster of conquered worlds. It was vast, larger than anything they had imagined. Not a ship, not a fleet, but a kind of darkness, a spreading quiet that moved through space like ink through water, and where it passed, the noise of life simply stopped. The combined fleet of the galaxy arrayed itself against it. And the steady one was there. It had lived so long now that it was ancient even by conquered standards, older than anyone, the last living being who remembered the morning past the moon when humanity had first shown the galaxy what it was. It had refused to stay behind. It commanded one of the great ships, the oldest of the human-built vessels, the one that still, after all these years, bore the name on its hull. The Vel. The battle was long and it was terrible, and it cannot be told in full here. There is not space, there are not words. But it can be said that the galaxy did not freeze. It can be said that world after world that the stillness reached for found that world defended, found ships waiting, found the noise of life fighting back instead of falling quiet. It can be said that the humans were everywhere, in the thick of it, loud and reckless and brilliant, throwing themselves into the dark again and again, dying by the thousands and refusing to stop. Because they had been dying to climb fences for their whole history, and they were not about to quit now. It can be said that the old wall of names grew longer than it had ever been. And it can be said that the stillness, for the first time in its endless existence, encountered something it could not silence. It did not understand. It had silenced 1,000 galaxies across the long ages. It had never met a thing that, when reached for, reached back. That when faced with silence, sang louder. That when shown its own death, looked at that death and said, "Not yet, and not here, and not us." The humans had a word for it. An old word from the early days, from the very beginning. They had carried it across all the centuries, through all the change, and they spoke it now as they threw themselves into the dark against the oldest enemy the galaxy had ever known. "We see you." The first words humanity ever heard from the stars. The conquered had said them long ago as a warning, as a way of saying, "We are watching you, stay small." And humanity had taken those words and carried them and made them their own, and now they spoke them back to the dark, to the stillness, to the silence that wanted to swallow everything. "We see you, and we are not afraid, and we will not be quiet." In the end, it was the steady one who found the way through. 900 years of certainty, broken by humanity one morning past the moon, and then 900 more years of learning from the loud and restless creatures it had once tried to cage. All of it came together in the steady one in that final hour. It understood the stillness because it had once been a little like the stillness. It had once believed in quiet and order and the proper place of things. And it had been wrong, and humanity had shown it how it was wrong. And now it knew the one thing the stillness could not understand. That life is not noise. That life is the point. That a galaxy full of motion and argument and song and reckless, impossible striving is not a sickness to be cured, but the most precious thing the universe has ever produced, and that anything which would silence it has mistaken the disease for the cure. The steady one took the Aaron Vel into the very heart of the darkness, where no one else could follow, carrying with it everything the galaxy had learned, every new technique, every impossible human improvement, all of it focused into a single act that the old conquered could never have managed alone, and that humanity could never have imagined without the old wisdom to guide it. The product of two civilizations. The thing that could only have existed because a frightened young world had once refused to stay behind its fence, and an ancient tired one had been brave enough to let it out. What happened in the heart of that darkness, no one fully knows. The Aaron Vel did not come back. The steady one did not come back. But the stillness stopped. It did not retreat. It did not flee. It simply stopped and went quiet itself, and the spreading dark drew back and shrank and faded, and the worlds it had emptied stayed empty, but no new worlds went silent. Whatever the steady one did in the heart of that thing, it ended it. It cost the oldest friend humanity ever had, and it cost a ship with an old man's name on it, but it ended. The galaxy lived. The noise went on. They built a new wall after. Not just for humans now. A wall for everyone who had died, every species, all the names braided together the way the founders' names had braided together long ago. It was the longest wall ever built, and near the very top of it in the place of honor were two names side by side. The Aaron Vel. And beside it, in the careful flowing script of the conquered, the long string of sounds that meant the steady one, the one who does not rush, translated for the humans into three words they understood. The friend who waited. Captain Rayspark stood before that wall when it was finished, and she was old by then too, the way they all got old in the end, and she read the names, all of them, human and conquered and the dozen species in between, the way the first Rays had read the names long ago in the early days when the wall was small. She thought about the whole long story. The signal at 3:42 in the morning, the fence past the moon, the long climb 11 years in the dark, the fleet of legends that materialized past the moon while the galaxy could only watch, the open hand instead of the fist, the peace that was harder than war, and then the oldest fence of all, the one nobody had ever climbed, and how the galaxy had climbed it together, loud and unafraid, refusing to the very end to be made quiet. She looked up, the way the first Rays had told everyone to look up, all those centuries ago, at Marcus Vega's farewell. The sky was open, all of it, every star. There were no fences left. "We did it," she said quietly to all the names on the wall, the humans and the conquered and everyone in between. Every fence they ever put in front of us, the first one past the moon, and the last one, the oldest one, the one made of silence. Her old eyes shone. "We climbed them all, and we did it together in the end. That's the part the old galaxy never understood about us. They thought we wanted to conquer. We never did. We just wanted the sky. We just wanted nobody to ever tell us, or anyone, where they could and couldn't go." She put her hand flat against the cold wall, over the two names at the top, the old man's ship and the friend who waited, side by side forever. "The sky's open now," she said. "All of it for everyone forever," she smiled. "Rest, we've got it from here." And far out in the open dark, past worlds without number, a star called Vega's light still burned. the way it does to this day. And the galaxy went on, loud and restless and free, full of 1,000 species who would never again be told to be quiet, who looked up at the open sky and felt what an old man's grandfather had felt long ago on a small blue world. That the sky is endless. That there is always more. That nothing is closed to those who refuse to stay behind the fence. And the galaxy, which had once only been able to watch as humanity advanced, watched no longer. It rose with them into the open dark. All of it together. At last,